My cousin, to save money, didn't get any prenatal checkups during her pregnancy. As a genetics PhD, I strongly urged her to take the free Down syndrome screening. The results came back as high risk. After that, my cousin had an induced abortion, and a year later, she gave birth to a healthy child. As my nephew grew up and became exhausted from the constant pressure, my cousin would always tell him, "You originally had an older brother, destined for wealth and prosperity beyond measure. You could have worked 20 years less. It was your aunt who brought him misfortune and caused him to be gone." From then on, my nephew held a grudge against me for years, eventually poisoning me to death. After being reborn, I returned to the day my cousin said she wouldn't go for the prenatal checkup. This time, I nodded and said, "You're right, sister, I was reborn." Back to the day my cousin confirmed her pregnancy. During the New Year's Eve dinner, she leaned in her husband's arms, happily stroking her belly and showing off her slightly protruding abdomen. She said she had a feeling when her period was delayed, so she waited until her belly showed before going to the hospital for a B ultrasound, which confirmed she was 14 weeks pregnant. The relatives were puzzled and asked why she didn't confirm it earlier. She raised an eyebrow and spoke proudly. "The master said that I am destined to give birth to a noble son this year, with a life blessed by gold and overflowing wealth. This is all obvious, so there's no need to rush to confirm it." The relatives were left speechless, and it took someone a while to finally blurt out, "Since you're in the second trimester, you can go to the hospital to register and have prenatal checkups." Little did they know, she clicked her tongue dismissively and sneered, "I'm not going for any prenatal checkups, it's all just a scam by hospitals to make money. The master said my son will definitely be healthy and live a long life. So why would I need checkups?" As she spoke, she patted me, who was sitting on her right, and said, "Right, Xiaoxia, you're well educated, so you must know what prenatal checkups are all about." I was startled by her pat, a shiver running through my body. Yes, it was the same in my previous life. As a PhD in genetics, I had already secured a teaching position at the university and was well aware of the wonders and complexities of genes. Even perfectly healthy parents, after undergoing comprehensive prenatal checkups and genetic screenings, may not be able to detect all potential issues, and there remains a small chance of giving birth to an unhealthy child. But prenatal checkups can screen out high-probability issues as much as possible. The state promotes eugenics and better child-rearing, and prenatal checkups are a crucial part of this. After all, for a family, the probability of giving birth to a child with problems is either 0% or 100%. If it happens, it will be a lifelong source of pain for both the child and the parents. My cousin and I grew up together, and we were very close as children. However, as we got older, our views became increasingly different, and our ideas completely diverged. In my previous life, out of childhood affection and reverence for biology, I earnestly advised her to get prenatal checkups and not to save those few $1,000s. If everything is fine, then everyone will be happy, and it can be considered as buying insurance. Relatives also agreed, and finally, my aunt made the final decision. My cousin and her husband then decided to register and get prenatal checkups after the new year. My cousin's Down syndrome screening came back high risk, and the doctor recommended amniocentesis for further screening. My cousin didn't take it seriously, still believing the screening was inaccurate, and thought amniocentesis was too expensive and risky, so she refused to do it. This time, before I could even persuade her much, my aunt dragged her to get the amniocentesis done, and it was confirmed that the baby in my cousin's womb had trisomy 21, also known as Down syndrome. My cousin's husband didn't want the child, so my cousin eventually had an induced abortion. Soon after, she became pregnant with her second child, and a year later, she gave birth to a healthy son. But my cousin has always been attached to the previous child, and from then on, there was a rift between the couple. They divorced when my nephew was 2 years old. After that, my cousin raised the child alone. Whenever she felt it was tough, or when my nephew felt exhausted from studying or working, she would tell him, "You originally had an older brother. The master said that child had a fortunate fate, destined for a life of wealth and leisure, able to enjoy immense riches without having to work hard. You could have relied on your brother to save 20 years of struggle. It was all because your aunt hindered your brother, causing him to fall ill and pass away." My cousin has held a grudge against me ever since. When he came to my school dormitory to ask me to revise his thesis, he poisoned me with chemicals stolen from the laboratory. The suspect couldn't be more obvious, but my parents passed away early, and my only relatives are my uncle and grandmother. They signed a letter of understanding, and my cousin's son was only given a light sentence of 5 years. After he gets out, he'll still have a bright future ahead of him. Because of this, my cousin even felt sorry for her son. "It's all your aunt's fault for causing you to make a mistake. Now you can't even take the civil service exam." Thinking of this, a scornful smile curled at the corner of my lips as I glanced at the relatives at the table. My grandmother, My uncle and my cousin, these were the people closest to me by blood. Yet my heart grew colder. After my parents passed away, I no longer had any family. This time, I replied to my cousin, "I'm not a doctor, and I'm not married, so I don't know what prenatal checkups are like. However, a mother would never harm her own child. It's best for you to decide for yourself, sister." My cousin was very pleased and put away the phone that her husband had intended to use to schedule an appointment with the obstetrics department. Xia is right, I would never harm my son. The master said he is healthy and destined for a life of leisure and prosperity, so it must be true. Yes, a wealthy idler. Let me see what kind of wealthy idler Tang Bao is. After the new year, my cousin has been staying at home to rest during her pregnancy, not doing any housework or exercising, and eating rich, meat-heavy meals every day. Occasionally, she would bring back incense ash from the temple, saying that soaking it in rootless water could help stabilize the pregnancy and bring blessings to the child. This is what the master taught him, to add another blessing to this precious child. My uncle called me, asking me to persuade my cousin, saying that incense ash is so dirty, how can she eat it, what if it harms the child? I remembered in my previous life, when her Down syndrome screening showed issues, she initially refused to undergo amniocentesis and brought back incense ash every day. She said, "This is incense ash blessed by the master, and eating it can defy fate, wash away the bad luck, and the child will be normal." My uncle came to me in the same way back then, asking for my help. I explained to my uncle and aunt the differences between the triple test, non-invasive DNA testing, and amniocentesis. In the end, I told my uncle that amniocentesis is the definitive diagnostic method. Since my cousin is an older mother, doctors would recommend going straight for amniocentesis rather than taking a risk. Knowing my uncle's family's frugal nature, I offered to cover the cost of the amniocentesis, and only then was my cousin willing to go through with the procedure. After all, I grew up in my uncle's household as a child, so it's only right that I repay them. Once there was a first time, there came a second. Later, when my cousin needed prenatal checkups, gave birth, stayed at a postpartum care center, and even the money for her baby's formula and diapers, I covered it all. She even booked a VIP integrated delivery room. At that time, I was just an associate professor, and spending that money really hurt. I don't want to be a saint anymore. I'll just respect and wish them well. On the phone, I reassured my uncle. "Don't worry, uncle, my sister is a grown woman, and everything she does is for the good of her child. Besides, the incense ash has been burned, so it's very clean." My uncle listened, half convinced and half doubting. "Then, should we just let her do it? What else could we do?" I said. "Uncle, don't worry. Didn't my sister say that the master told her my nephew is a blessed person, destined for a life of leisure and endless, immense wealth? Children and grandchildren have their own fortunes. You don't need to worry about this." My words boosted his confidence and eased his worries. "Xiaoxia, you're right, your uncle and I have donated so much incense money, so it should naturally bring blessings to our descendants." My uncle and aunt have been vegetarians and devout Buddhists their whole lives. My cousin, who grew up under their influence, is even more so. Half a year later, I was successfully promoted to associate professor. It wasn't until summer vacation that I had time to visit my uncle's house to see my grandmother, and I happened to run into my cousin who had come back to her parents' home for a meal. This was also the first time I had seen my cousin since the Lunar New Year. At this point, she was already full term in her pregnancy. Her entire body had swollen into a ball, twice as wide as before, with her belly protruding so much that she could barely walk. Her cousin's husband helped her through the door, but after just a few steps, she was panting heavily, complaining of pain in her hips, and had to sit down on the sofa, her legs spread wide apart, unable to close them. In my previous life, due to my intervention, she underwent prenatal checkups during her second pregnancy. The doctor strictly monitored her health indicators, and by the time she gave birth, she had only gained 22 pounds. With the baby weighing 2 pounds, a very standard outcome, and she successfully delivered naturally. This time, without my persuasion, she skipped the prenatal checkups and had no awareness of controlling her weight at all, gaining a full 50 pounds. Before getting pregnant, my cousin weighed no more than 100 pounds. She had ballooned up like a balloon, her face puffed out with flesh, and her eyes seemed smaller. When she saw me coming, she stroked her belly with happiness and pride. She said, "The master said I should eat more pig's feet and fatty meat. These things help put on weight. Seafood is too cold, I can't eat it. My baby is well nourished and will definitely have a strong build. When it's born, it'll be a big, chubby boy over 8 pounds, healthy and sturdy." I don't know where this so-called master of hers came from, giving advice on what a pregnant woman should eat. It must be a big, chubby boy," I replied absent-mindedly, looking at her frighteningly swollen belly. I deeply suspected it was more than just an 8-pound plus big, chubby boy, however. For my cousin's wife, having a macrosomic baby was already the easiest hurdle to overcome. Halfway through dinner, my cousin's chopsticks fell to the floor. She clutched her stomach, her face pale as she cried out in pain, her voice growing more and more heart-wrenching with each scream. Uncle and cousin-in-law, one driving and the other fetching the maternity bag, the whole family sent my cousin to the nearest maternity and child hospital. I casually glanced at the so-called maternity bag my cousin had prepared and was instantly stunned. Inside, there were no small cans of formula, diapers, or maternity pads, but a stack of the cheapest toilet paper and cloth cut from old clothes, likely intended to be used as diapers for the baby. I drove my own car and rushed over as well. In the emergency hall, the doctors were just learning about my cousin's situation, since the expectant mother was not from their hospital's records. The doctors proceeded with routine inquiries. As soon as they learned that the cousin had never undergone any prenatal checkups and had gained so much weight, the doctors' expressions changed instantly. However, since she had already been admitted through the emergency department, and they were a maternal and child hospital, with the expectant mother experiencing regular contractions and at risk of her water breaking at any moment, they had no choice but to grit their teeth and accept her. The obstetrician on night duty suggested performing an ultrasound first before sending her to the delivery room. My cousin was sweating profusely from the pain, yet she still had the energy to shout, "No, I won't do the ultrasound." I knew she was reluctant to spend those few extra dollars, so I stood by without saying a word. After she was taken to the delivery room, the doctor performed an examination and, through my cousin's thick belly, struggled to estimate the baby's size by hand. He said, "You've gained 50 pounds during your pregnancy, so the baby is likely oversized. How about we go straight for a C-section?" The others stood by in stunned silence, and my aunt asked, "Isn't a C-section bad for the baby?" As soon as she finished speaking, my cousin shouted, "No C-section. Babies who haven't been squeezed through the birth canal aren't smart. Don't even think about trying to scam my money." I quietly walked to the door of the delivery room, pretending not to know them. The doctor was left with no choice. After confirming that her cervix was dilated 2 centimeters, he followed the procedure and asked, "The anesthesiologist can come now. Do you want an epidural?" My aunt whispered, "What is painless?" My cousin gritted her teeth and refused. "You quacks, just trying to scam my money. What good could anesthesia be? What if it hurts my son's brain? Get out." After being cursed like that, the doctor lost all patience, clicked his tongue lightly, and left. After that, only my cousin's occasional moans remained in the delivery room. I yawned, said goodbye to my uncle, and went back to the hotel to sleep. Early the next morning, I went to the hospital again to see what was happening. It turned out that my cousin had been in pain all night and still hadn't given birth. Later, she was in so much pain that she no longer had the strength to cry out, just muttering something with a pale face. I lowered my head to listen and heard her saying, "May the Master bless me, and may the child be born safely." At noon, my cousin was finally about to give birth, but the process was extremely harrowing. The baby was in a breech position, with the buttocks down. It is said that when my cousin was about to give birth, the midwife finally felt the baby's position through the thick layer of belly fat and immediately changed her expression, calling for a doctor. This time, no matter how much she resisted, after her husband signed the consent form, my cousin was immediately taken for a cesarean section. The result was the birth of a supersized baby weighing 9 pounds and 8 ounces. As for my cousin, with a massive wound on her abdomen and postpartum hemorrhage, she stayed in the hospital for a week before worrying about the cost and requesting to be discharged. No matter how much I hate them for how they treated me in my past life, I still feel a bit sorry for my cousin. As a woman myself, I can empathize with the pain that only women have to endure, but she didn't seem to feel any pain at all. On the way home from the hospital, she held the baby and kept complaining non-stop about how the doctor had cheated her out of a lot of money. My uncle's family isn't particularly well off, but hearing her speak with such vigor, they chimed in to support her. I sat by her side, watching the chubby nephew in her arms, who weighed over 10 pounds, with his upward slanting, outward tilted eye slits and flat nose bridge, silently sighing in my heart. Amniocentesis truly is the gold standard. The nephew with Down syndrome, whom I never met in my previous life, I finally saw in this one, seeing the well-behaved, sleeping baby. I began to feel heartache for the child's future life. After giving birth to a son, my cousin devoted herself entirely to the child. In her previous life, because I was the one footing the bill, she only needed to rest and breastfeed at the postpartum care center, without having to hold or soothe the baby. Her postpartum recovery was very comfortable, and her body recovered well. After the postpartum period, she basically returned to her pre-pregnancy state. With a rosy complexion and full of energy. Of course, this time I won't be the one footing the bill, so my cousin stayed at her parents' house for her postpartum confinement, with my aunt taking care of her while she looked after the baby herself. I bought 2 packs of diapers to visit my little nephew. I felt genuinely sorry for the little guy. Every time he pooped or peed, it would soak through his clothes, and his bottom was never clean. My cousin was holding the baby, trying to get him to sleep. When she saw the diapers in my hand, she wasn't pleased. Why buy diapers? They're too stuffy and will give the baby a rash. I opened my mouth, but in the end, I didn't speak up to defend myself. Forget it, respect others' fate, I said. Then should I take it back? You silly girl, you've already bought it. Can you even return it? Just keep it. My cousin quickly replied. I knew it. She still couldn't bear to part with this bargain. My cousin's body hasn't fully recovered yet. Her entire face is pale, with dark circles under her eyes, clearly showing she hasn't rested well. She looks as if she could collapse at any moment. I asked my cousin, which hospital did you go to for the baby's 1-month checkup? My nephew's nickname is Debeo. To my surprise, my cousin said with dissatisfaction, what's the point of a checkup? Look how well Debeo is growing. He's already 12 pounds at just 20 days old. So healthy and strong. Why would we need those quack doctors for a checkup? I pursed my lips and remained silent, staring at Debeo's slightly open eyes, the wide-set eyes, narrow and elongated shape, low-set ears, and flat nose. At just 20 days old, the distinctive facial features were already quite noticeable. If you go for a checkup at this time, the doctor can see the problem, but unfortunately, my cousin is unwilling to go. I sighed, not for her, but for the poor innocent child. Debeo grew very quickly, and his physique was indeed as strong as my cousin had said. By the time he was over 5 months old, Debeo's peculiarities had become quite obvious. Debeo's development is slower than that of ordinary children, with delayed movements and reactions. When adults try to engage him, he only responds with a silly smile, not to mention his increasingly noticeable Down syndrome features. My cousin took him to play in the neighborhood, where other parents gathered to chat and interact. The other parents, upon seeing Debeo's appearance, froze with stiff expressions. Hesitating to speak, my cousin grabbed Debeo's hand and waved it, saying, "Say hello to Auntie. Look, our Debeo is so smart. He smiles when he sees you." Ah, yes, indeed, quite adorable. The parent, afraid of causing trouble, felt too embarrassed to voice their own opinion and could only agree without dampening the mood. A high school boy playing with his sister nearby saw Debeo and spoke to his mother, his voice not soft, and was overheard by the cousin. "Mom, that little baby looks really strange. It seems like the facial features of a child with Down syndrome we learned about in the textbook." My cousin's face instantly darkened with rage as she stormed over to scold him. "What are you talking about, you ill-mannered little brat? Not paying attention in class and speaking without thinking. What do you know? This is the kind of face only the wealthy and leisurely have. How could you poor folks possibly understand?" The high school student had never seen such a shrewish outburst before. Terrified, he picked up his little sister and fled with his mother in a panic. My cousin was so furious that she stayed right where she was, stomping her feet and cursing while holding Debeo, until all the children and parents in the neighborhood park had been driven away by her tirade. In truth, over the past few months, the family had all noticed something strange about Debeo. Although the child is growing well in height and weight, the development of the limbs is not ideal, and both the appearance and the gaze are quite unusual. My uncle secretly called me about this, asking if we should take Debeo to the hospital while my cousin wasn't around. I said, "Cousin is Debeo's mother, and she knows him best. Don't worry, uncle, let's not interfere too much." Later, my cousin was upset all day, and when her husband came home, she told him about the incident. My brother-in-law's face was pale, his gaze unfocused. After a long silence, he finally said, "Honey, actually, I've had this feeling for a long time." My cousin was stunned. "What? Let's take Debeo to the hospital for a checkup." As he finished speaking, my brother-in-law's eyes welled up with tears, over whether to take Debeo to the hospital for a checkup. My cousin and her husband had a huge argument. In the end, it was my cousin's mother-in-law and my aunt who made the decision, forcibly taking the child to the nearest maternal and child health hospital. The doctor at the maternal and child health hospital still remembered my cousin. When he saw her bringing the child in, his expression turned grim. Upon taking a closer look at the child's face, his expression changed abruptly. "I suggest you take the child to a larger hospital for further examination." The doctor said this. His reserved attitude immediately made all the adults feel uneasy, with only my cousin still cursing and complaining. "I told you, you quacks, if you don't have the skills, don't go around pretending to be doctors, you're harming people." Afterward, while my cousin went up the mountain to seek out a master, her husband took Debeo to a major hospital in Shanghai to consult with a specialist. The specialist only took one look at Debeo, furrowed his brow, and ordered a blood test for chromosomal analysis, puzzled as he said, "Why did you only bring him for a checkup now? This child has very typical Down syndrome facial features." My cousin's husband was on the verge of collapse, panicking and unsure of what to do. Later, the chromosome test results came out, and Debeo was officially diagnosed with 21 trisomy syndrome, that is, Down syndrome. My cousin's family was thrown into chaos. My uncle and aunt seemed to age 20 years overnight, and my uncle called me to ask what to do. What could I do? I could only offer cold verbal comfort. "Uncle," my cousin said, "the fortune teller predicted that Debeo would be a wealthy idler. Now, half of that has come true, maybe the other half will come true in the future." My uncle was left speechless. This kind of idler, I dislike my uncle's whole family, but I hold no ill will toward Debeo. It's just that this is the mess my cousin created herself. As I spoke, I heard my cousin's sharp and harsh voice on the other end of the phone. It must be that quack doctor at the maternity hospital causing trouble. I knew he was unreliable. "Look what he's done to my child. It's all his fault." The word fault instantly awakened memories from my past life. I shuddered, exchanged a few casual pleasantries, shook my head, and hung up the phone. Sometimes I really envy my cousin. She only blames others and never wastes energy on self-doubt. 2 months later, my cousin got pregnant again. She quickly accepted the fact that her first child had Down syndrome, but she kept complaining that it was the doctor's fault. She also said a fortune teller told her that even if her first child had problems, he was destined for immense wealth, and her second child would be even smarter and richer. At that time, I was sent to the United States for a 1-year exchange program, completely distancing myself from my uncle's family. Due to the time difference and expensive international roaming fees, my uncle and cousin gradually stopped contacting me. I was happy to have some peace and quiet, enjoying my studies and work in the U.S., where I learned a lot. After returning to China, I became eligible to compete for a professorship, leaving me with even less time to attend to my cousin's family. It wasn't until another Chinese New Year that I finally had the time and energy to return to my hometown and see my cousin again. I met my 6-month-old nephew. He looked exactly like the nephew from my previous life, healthy and normal, with very clever eyes. My cousin said his name was Qinchin, and my mind went blank. Even the name was the same. So, even if Qinchin had an extra older brother and a different birth date, would he still come into this world? Qinming, my eldest nephew, holding a bottle of milk, stumbled over to me and handed it to me with a smile. "Auntie, my nephew is over 2 years old, chubby and plump. Although he looks different, he has a gentle and kind personality. Unlike other genetic disorders, children with Down syndrome have a certain level of intelligence, emotions, and self-care abilities. What is most heartbreaking is that they may even be aware that they are different from others." I took the milk and patted his head, saying, "Good boy, Debao." "Qinming, what are you doing out here? Go back to your room and stay there." My cousin suddenly raised her voice sharply when she saw him come out. Qinming was startled, shrinking his neck as he slowly turned and walked towards the cramped, narrow bedroom. The cousin took her younger son, Qinchin, from her husband's arms, kissed him on the cheek, and proudly boasted with a smile, "Xiaoxia, look at my son, so handsome and well-behaved. The master said he is destined for great things in the future." I watched the saliva she left on Qinchen's face, his skin flushed with an abnormal eczema rash. I opened my mouth to speak but decided against advising adults to kiss babies less. Forget it. If she loves to kiss him, let her kiss him more. I respect her. I just didn't expect that, after having a younger son. Even my cousin, who firmly believed that her eldest son was destined for a life of wealth and leisure, would start losing patience with him. No matter what, people just can't help but show favoritism. My cousin gave up on her main account and switched to raising her alt account, putting a lot of effort into Qinchen's education. When Qinchin was in kindergarten, she suggested that Qinchen's household registration be placed under my name, so that starting from elementary school, he could attend the affiliated elementary school of University B. I could practically hear her scheming over the phone. University B is one of the top 3 universities in the country, with its affiliated elementary and middle schools nearby, boasting excellent promotion rates and known as the cradle for University B students. As an associate professor at University B, any child under my household registration naturally qualifies to attend the affiliated elementary school of University B. In my previous life, out of family affection and pity for my cousin who had lost her first child, I took the initiative to have Qinchin registered under my household. He attended the B University affiliated elementary school. Since my cousin was not in the city, I simply let Qinchin live with me, educating and nurturing him from a young age. I was fully devoted to scientific research, with no intention of falling in love, getting married, or having children, so I treated Qinchin as my own. Under my guidance, Chinchin was quite promising. He eventually managed to enter the B University-affiliated high school without major issues and, in the end, barely made it into B University. At that time, I was already a well-known scholar in genetics and also the vice dean of the School of Biology at University B. For Chinchin's future development, my cousin had him choose biology, and he even became my graduate student. I personally guided him in research, taught him how to write papers, helped him win scholarships, and made him an outstanding graduate. In the end, he took the newly developed poison from the lab and poisoned me to death. This time, upon hearing my cousin's suggestion, I pretended to be clueless. "No, sis, I'm registered under the school's collective household registration, so Chinchin can't be added. Besides, I don't have my own house, so it's not convenient, sis. Maybe you should think of another way." I had been worried about this situation for years, so I moved my household registration into the school, kept saving money in fixed-term financial products, and invested in a company run by a friend. Anything but buying a house. Anyway, I have a dormitory at school. I'm not planning to start a family, and it's more convenient for my research. My cousin didn't expect that answer and was at a loss, murmuring, "Well, I'll have to think about it again." In the end, Chinchin didn't come to study in my city but stayed at a local primary school in our hometown. For the sake of convenience and care, my cousin pulled some strings and placed Chinming, who had already attended 4 years of kindergarten and should have been in first grade long ago, into Chinchin's class, so the two brothers could study together. She believed this would make it easier to look after them, and the master had said, "When brothers are deeply connected, their strength can cut through metal. Supporting each other leads to boundless wealth." In the blink of an eye, Chinchin was already in second grade. Unlike in his previous life, without my guidance, his grades were not at the top of the class as they had been before, but only at an average level. Moreover, his parents were called to the school almost every month either for quarreling with classmates or for getting into fights. The reason is his older brother, Chinming. 2 years ago, Chinming was pulled into Chinchin's first-grade class through connections arranged by their cousin. However, as a child with special needs, Chinming's intellectual development couldn't keep up, making it impossible for him to learn. Fortunately, he was well-behaved and could manage basic self-care with some difficulty, but occasionally, he still couldn't control himself and would soil his clothes, so even at 8 or 9 years old, he still wore diapers. Having such a brother in class made Chinchin the target of mockery and ridicule from his classmates. When Chinchin moved up to second grade and Chinming remained in first grade, he felt a sense of relief. However, the news that Chinchin from class 2 has a mentally disabled brother had already spread, and everyone used Chinming to make fun of him. Chinming didn't have an easy time in first grade either. He was much taller than his classmates and rather chubby. The first-grade children were both afraid of him and curious about him. Once they got to know him, they loved to gather around and make fun of him. When he returned home, he kept repeating that he didn't want to go to school, and his cousins slapped him. "I provide you with food, clothes, and education, and you still have the nerve to complain. Who do you think you are? Without me, would you even exist in this world? You're nothing but a burden." Chinming held his face in confusion, still not understanding why his mother had hit him. Ever since he could remember, his mother had been harsh to him, but his young mind didn't understand what harshness was. He only knew that this was his mother, and he loved her. Chinchin came out of the bedroom and shouted, "Keep it down, I need to study." All right, sweetie, you study hard," his cousin said, trying to please him. Chinchin glared at Chinming, slammed the door shut, and took out his phone from the drawer to continue playing games. When Chinchin was in 4th grade, Chinming was still in 1st grade. He had been mocked for having a foolish older brother for 4 whole years and finally couldn't take it anymore, so he secretly beat Chinming up at school. Chinming lay on the ground, foolishly motionless, letting Chinchin's fists land on his face, only looking confused. Halfway through the beating, Chinchin suddenly felt it was all meaningless. If only this fool weren't in this world, he had this thought. Fortunately, soon after, the school gave my cousin an ultimatum. Chinming would be expelled and sent to a special school. The connections my cousin had relied on were no longer dependable. She also couldn't bear the cost of sending Chinming to a special school, so after he was withdrawn from the regular school, he stayed at home and never went back to school. And after Chinchin hit Chinming, it didn't cause any ripples. Chinchin was constantly ostracized and mocked by his classmates in elementary school. His grades were at the very bottom, and he had a long record of fights and brawls. Upon entering middle school, he finally breathed a sigh of relief because none of his classmates knew who he was or that he had a mentally disabled older brother. However, the study habits he had already destroyed could never be recovered. He still disliked studying, slept in class, and after school. He hung out with vocational high school students from outside the school, quickly picking up smoking. A relative spotted Chinchin playing video games at a mall during school hours, cigarette in mouth, and rushed to inform his cousin. My cousin scolded him harshly. My Chinchin is the most well-behaved child. How could he possibly skip class and smoke? You're just jealous because Chinchin is going to make a lot of money to support me in the future. What a venomous heart. The relative felt embarrassed and left in disgrace, never interacting with my cousin again from then on. At that time, I was still in my own city, working diligently and focusing on scientific research. Technology advanced rapidly, and many new inventions emerged worldwide, benefiting humanity. I resumed the project I had left unfinished before my death in my previous life. A genetic modification technology that could correct certain specific genetic defects, if successfully developed. It might help children with Down syndrome regain some degree of intelligence and self-care abilities. Thanks to the memories from my past life, my project progressed smoothly, and I became the vice dean of the institute earlier than I had in my previous life. I hadn't returned home for many years, hadn't bought a house, and my cousin hadn't been in touch with me for a long time. This allowed me to enjoy a peaceful life. Though I occasionally felt a pang of discomfort when I heard news about Chinming from relatives, I heard that when my cousin feels things aren't going well, she hits Chinming. Chinming hasn't left the house in 6 months, and Chinchin is afraid that if he goes out, classmates who recognize him might see him and embarrass him. I'm increasingly convinced that no matter how much a person grows up, their true nature is hard to change. A year later, my cousin suddenly called me, urgently asking to borrow money. I asked how much she needed. She opened her mouth and asked for 200,000. Of course, I have the money, but I won't lend it to her. In my previous life, I lent her 500,000 to buy a house for Chinchin, but not only did I not get it back, I even lost my life. In the end, all my assets were swallowed up by their family. I pretended to be poor, sis. A teacher's salary is really low. I don't have that kind of money at all. And even though I live in the school dormitory, I still have to pay rent. Look at me, I still can't afford to buy a house. Where would I get 200,000 from? I've been driving a beat-up car and wearing old clothes back to my hometown all these years, and I do look quite poor. My cousin hesitated a bit. Oh, I see. Well, how about 100,000, even 50,000 would do. Just lend it to me to get through this emergency. I asked, cousin, what happened? Why do you need money so urgently? My cousin hesitated for a moment before telling me. It turned out that Chinchin had gotten into trouble at school. He pushed a classmate down the stairs, causing serious injuries. It was said that the classmate was still unconscious and undergoing emergency treatment. The classmate's family had some connections and wanted Chinchin to go to jail. That was why my cousin was trying to gather some money to settle the matter privately. Upon further inquiry, I learned that Chinchin had pushed the person because of Chinming. Since they all studied in a small town, it was inevitable that some of them attended the same school as Chinchin. He knew Chinchin and was aware that Chinchin had an older brother with Down syndrome, so he spread the word all over the school. Chinchin soon noticed that unfamiliar classmates in the school often looked at him and snickered, while his own classmates mocked him, asking if he had stupid genes. He quickly realized that it had still been discovered. He had a stupid older brother, so Chinchin investigated within the school to find out who had exposed his private matter. Chinchin had always been a vengeful person, and after getting involved with some shady characters, his classmates all feared him, so he quickly spilled everything. He tracked down the instigator, chased him through the school, and finally kicked him down the stairs. That kick landed the boy in the ICU. I expressed my helplessness and watched coldly as my cousin's family dealt with the situation. Fortunately, the classmate who was beaten woke up and was not seriously injured, but he had a scar on his face that could never be removed. The classmate's parents still refused to let Chinchin off. In the end, my cousin and her husband sold their house to compensate the victim. And only then did Chinchin manage to avoid being sent to a juvenile detention center. He was also expelled from school. In the end, my uncle pulled many strings to get him enrolled in a vocational high school. My cousin couldn't accept that Chinchin ended up having to go to a vocational high school. She went into a frenzy at home and called me, saying, Xiaoxia, you're a university professor, and I heard you've even become a dean. You must have a way to get Chinchin into your school. Can't you just figure something out? The master said. Chinchin is destined for great achievements and a prosperous future. If you treat him well, he will surely treat you well in return. Look, you're not married and have no children. Won't Chinchin be like your own child in the future? I found it amusing and almost laughed out loud. Sis, first of all, I'm just a vice dean. Our college has 4 vice deans. I'm the last in line and have no real authority at all. Also, Chinchin's grades aren't even good enough to get into a junior college. If I get him into the university, we'll all be waiting to go to jail. My cousin immediately fell silent. I remained quiet for a few seconds before softly saying, "Sis, both Qinchin and Qinming are your children. Your children will always be your children, not anyone else's. They're your responsibility." But it was clear that my cousin didn't want any part of that responsibility. After the family sold their house to pay the compensation, they were completely broke. My uncle and aunt were physically and mentally exhausted, their hair turning white overnight. My cousin's husband could no longer stand the chaotic and toxic atmosphere at home, so he divorced my cousin and didn't even seek custody of Qinchin. However, he still had a conscience. Fearing that my cousin and Qinchin might mistreat Qinming, he borrowed money from his parents and sent Qinming to a special school for boarding. Since then, my cousin and Qinchin have relied on each other for survival. But they have also wasted each other's time. I heard that the two of them live at my uncle's house, arguing all day long. Qinchin heard from others that his cousin didn't undergo prenatal checkups, which is why Qinming was born. As a result, he became cynical all day long, blaming his cousin for not getting prenatal checkups and dragging the whole family down. My cousin, being sharp-tongued herself, retorted, "You brat, if your older brother were normal, would you even be here? You shouldn't have come into this world in the first place." Qinchin, upon hearing this, was both self-destructive and intent on hitting his cousin, and even his uncle and aunt couldn't hold him back. In the end, the elderly couple decided to wash their hands of the matter, giving them a sum of money to rent a place outside, just to have some peace and quiet for themselves. 3 years later, my gene modification technology was successfully developed, and in collaboration with relevant authoritative medical experts, it officially entered the clinical trial phase. I thought of Qinming. By this time, I hadn't been in contact with my cousin's family for a long while. I only heard occasionally from relatives that my cousin and Qinchin fight with each other every day. Qinchin dropped out of vocational high school and works as a shampoo assistant in a hair salon. My cousin is still muttering, saying that the master told her she is destined to have a noble son and can easily attain wealth and honor. So she is actively dating, believing it was her ex-husband's problem. She hasn't met her true love, and only her true love can help her give birth to a noble son. I asked my relative, "What kind of person is this master, really?" The relative clicked their tongue lightly and said, He's just a wandering monk from some temple in the village." He guessed the genders of a few people's children correctly, and the folks around started saying he's amazing, calling him a master. So that's how it is. He must be quite skilled at crafting his own persona and marketing himself, which is how he managed to deceive my cousin for so many years, making her suffer so much while still believing in him wholeheartedly. After returning from a seminar in Beijing, I saw a hunched, gaunt figure at the entrance of my dorm. He was crouched on the ground, his down jacket shedding feathers, looking utterly destitute, unlike the spirited and handsome young man from his previous life. Qinchin in this life, though having the same face, carried an air of weariness and dullness. I clearly hadn't told anyone my dorm room number, and in this life, I had only met Qinchin a few times, yet he managed to find it. Feeling a mix of surprise and suspicion, I called out softly, "Qinchin." As if just noticing my arrival, Qinchin abruptly lifted his head, his eyes lighting up briefly before turning flustered. He whispered, "Auntie, what are you here for?" I didn't approach him, keeping a distance of 3 meters, and asked, "How did you know I live here, Aunt?" "I remember now," Qinchin whispered. My heart skipped a beat, and I pretended not to understand. "Remember what? You used to be very good to me." "Not like this now. I don't have a brother either." When I saw the school, I remembered, I was supposed to study here, and I'm going to inherit your property in the future. Qinchin's voice grew louder as he spoke. I scolded him in a low voice. "Qinchin, what nonsense are you talking? What property do I have for you to inherit?" Qinchin was stunned by my rebuke and shook his head vigorously. "No, Auntie, I didn't want to kill you. It was all that woman. She brainwashed me. She said it was all your fault that my life is so exhausting." I watched coldly. "I don't know what you're talking about, Qinchin. It seems you're too tired. You should go home and rest properly." I moved closer to the railing and saw that security guards had already entered the dormitory building downstairs, letting out a sigh of relief. When I saw Qinchin, I secretly sent a message to the head of the security department, asking him to bring some people over. Seeing my attitude, a flash of malice crossed Qinchin's eyes. Just as I was about to brace myself, I heard him shout, "It's all that woman's fault. That idiot is her child. Without the two of them, I could have lived a good life. Definitely not like this, washing hair all day. My hands are peeling from washing." I took a step back, and the head of the security department had already emerged from the stairwell with security guards, standing right in front of me. "You, what are you doing? You're not from our school, are you?" the head of the security department shouted, pointing at him. I pretended to persuade him, saying, "Old Lou, this is my nephew." I didn't recognize him at first and got a fright. "It's all a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding." After Chinchin was persuaded to leave, I thought it over and still felt uneasy, so I simply rented a hotel room long-term outside, afraid that Chinchin would discover my whereabouts. I just never expected that in this lifetime, Chinchin was still making mistakes. But not toward me. The next time I heard news about my cousin's family was through a phone call from my uncle. On the phone, my uncle and aunt were crying their hearts out. They said my cousin was dead, stabbed 18 times by Chinchin in a temple. They also said that the monk known as the Master died at the same time, and the two were found disheveled, rolling together on a bed, after Chinchin started living with my cousin. He noticed she was always leaving early and returning late. So he followed her and caught her in the act with the monk. He jumped out angrily to question her and only then learned that after his cousin gave birth to Qinming, she had always wondered if the seed was wrong. Under the master's brainwashing, she decided to let the master help her undergo a rebirth and purification. His cousin said, "Just once, and you can be completely transformed." Not long after, you came along. The master is truly amazing. This time, she sought out the master because she felt her life wasn't going well, and as she had grown older, she wasn't as beautiful as before, making it hard to find a high-quality man. So, she wanted to ask the master for another rebirth and purification. The old monk naturally wouldn't refuse such a stroke of luck that came knocking on his door and immediately led her into the inner room of the temple. Upon hearing these words, Chinchin was so enraged that he lost his sanity. After living for so many years, he had just learned that he might be the old monk's offspring. He grabbed a fruit knife from the room, rushed forward, and stabbed the old monk, striking him right in the heart and killing him instantly. His cousin was so frightened that she nearly fainted, but still fearing that Chinchin might be discovered, she wanted to help cover up the crime. However, she never expected that Chinchin hated her even more. He stabbed his cousin 18 times. He is 18 years old this year. One stab, 1 year. I saw in a news interview where the reporter asked him why he harbored so much hatred, stabbing his own biological mother so many times. He said, "Just thinking about how my life was ruined by her fills me with hatred. Every extra year I live is another year of suffering. I want her to know just how much pain I'm in." I turned off the TV, not wanting to see any more news about that family. I never expected that the outcome of my non-interference would be far more tragic than I had imagined. It is said that before my cousin died, she was still calling out Chinchin. She died in agony, but until the very end, she never realized that it was her own actions that led to this outcome. I contacted my cousin-in-law, reached an agreement, and took Qinming away from the special school. He came into this world because of my non-intervention. His world remains simple and innocent. But he also suffers more than the average person. The new technology one developed has shown significant effects in animal experiments, and clinical trials are actively underway, achieving certain results. With the consent of my cousin-in-law and my uncle and aunt, I decided to let him join the experiment, hoping that this new medical approach would help improve his brain defects. Later, the experiment was very successful, and Qinming became the first child with Down syndrome to achieve significant intellectual improvement through this new technology. Although his motor skills remained weak and his appearance was still distinctive, his brain had been repaired by 90%, allowing him to live independently. While he may not be as intelligent as the average person, he is now able to communicate slowly and normally with others. I sent him back to school to continue his education. At the age of 30, he graduated from high school and found a job as a customer service representative for an online store. Although his responses were slow, his good temper and patience earned him 5-star reviews from customers. Major news outlets vied to report on him, turning him into an inspirational legend, a figure like Forrest Gump, who participated in various events and TV shows, earning a substantial amount of money. Qinming was deeply grateful and invested most of the money he earned into my subsequent experiments, supporting me in continuing my scientific research. I thought, perhaps the master wasn't entirely wrong. Now, Qinming truly lives a life of wealth and leisure. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My sister-in-law is pregnant with twins, but she's risking her life to give birth at the calculated time. It is said that a son born at that moment will be wealthy and noble for life. I advised her to give birth as soon as her water broke, otherwise the baby could suffocate and develop cerebral palsy. She listened and went into the delivery room, but after giving birth to twin daughters, she cursed me for ruining her fortune, saying I turned her son into daughters. My brother also blamed me for speaking too much. leaving the children with me and our parents, and taking his wife back to her family home. My parents are frail, so I had no choice but to take on the responsibility of caring for my 2 children, but as soon as the children started kindergarten, they couldn't wait to marry me off to a fool. The 2 nieces I raised by hand also complained that I had no money and took up space, urging me to marry quickly. I disagreed, and during the struggle, my brother pushed me off a high building, costing me my life. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my sister-in-law was giving birth. As soon as I opened my eyes, I heard the nurse's urgent voice, "The amniotic fluid has already broken. What are you all waiting for?" My sister-in-law, Rinjia, was drenched in sweat from the contractions but still insisted, "No, we must wait until 6 in the afternoon, that's the calculated time. Not a minute earlier." Yeah, you're the aunt. Don't you also think that giving birth at that time is the best for the child?" Facing my sister-in-law's face, filled with pain yet earnest hope, I quickly nodded. "Sister-in-law, you're absolutely right. Everything is for the child. Keep going." My words not only stunned Rinjia for a moment but also shocked my brother and mother in the hospital room. Taking in their expressions, I understood clearly. They had indeed been setting me up from the very beginning. I had thought it strange earlier when my mother kept sighing and complaining in my ear that my sister-in-law had already started labor but insisted on waiting until 6 in the afternoon to give birth, saying she was too stubborn and not considering the child. I thought she said that because she wanted me to persuade my sister-in-law, but I never expected that after the child was born, not only did my brother and Rinjia blame me, but even my mother cried and complained that I had spoken carelessly. However, when my brother and sister-in-law abandoned the child and left, she knelt down and begged me to help her. Feeling sorry for her, I had no choice but to help her take care of the 2 little babies, but I never thought that half a month later, she would use poor health as an excuse and leave both children entirely to me. Having been reborn and knowing they were acting, I naturally wouldn't be fooled again. Seeing that Rinjia was about to say something more, I immediately said, "I'll go buy more diaper pads for my 2 nephews. My brother only prepared 1 pack, and it definitely won't be enough for 2 kids. Recently, I was laid off from my company and hadn't found a suitable job. As soon as I returned, I ran into Rinjia giving birth. In my previous life, they didn't hold back either, knowing I had some savings. They didn't buy most of the things needed for childbirth, just waiting for me. Later on, after leaving the child with me, they didn't contribute a single penny. Whenever I tried to ask them about it, Rinjia would threaten to harm herself, blaming me for ruining the timing of her childbirth and turning her son into a daughter. My mother also took sides, urging me to endure it and not break up the family. Seeing that I wasn't cooperating, my brother and my mother exchanged a glance, and my mother immediately put on a pained expression, saying, "Buying things isn't urgent right now. The main thing is your sister-in-law. I also think sister-in-law is the most important right now. How about I go buy her some Red Bull, chocolate, and things like that, so she'll have energy when the time comes, and maybe some pregnancy milk powder or protein powder. She can have that after giving birth." No, Rinjia's face twisted in pain, and she couldn't manage to say anything. In her previous life, at this point, she had already dilated 10 centimeters. They say that kind of pain is unbearable, but before she could finish, I turned and left the delivery room. However, I didn't go downstairs to buy anything. Instead, I headed straight for the VIP delivery room on the other side of the corridor. Near the fire exit in the delivery room, a man was on the phone. I overheard him say, "Don't worry, it's almost time here. Don't worry, I've arranged everything. When the time comes, the baby will be swapped." As he spoke, the man walked behind the fire exit. I wanted to follow him, but I thought it might be unwise to alert him prematurely. As I left, I noticed a girl inside the delivery room who was sleeping. She had an extremely large belly, looked exhausted, yet still carried an air of elegance. She must be the eldest daughter of the Jin family from my previous life, the one whose child was swapped, and who fell to her death before even finishing her postpartum confinement. Since I have a chance to start over in this life, I might as well find a powerful ally to rely on. After that, I went downstairs and found a company that collaborates with the hospital to provide nannies. There, after a series of skill demonstrations, I obtained their company's qualification for in-home service. When the person in charge saw my educational background, CET6 certificate, and teaching qualification, they immediately beamed with a wide smile. Coincidentally, "We have a job here that we haven't been able to find the right person for." As expected, she recommended me for the VIP delivery room. In my previous life, I had accidentally learned that the nanny their family had hired suddenly fell ill and couldn't start work, and they were looking for a suitable replacement. A monthly salary of 50,000 is quite attractive, but unfortunately, At that time, I had no parenting experience at all and could only let the opportunity slip away, but this life is different. I raised a pair of twins single-handedly, not only ensuring their physical fitness far surpassed that of their peers, I also implemented bilingual education, allowing them to effortlessly engage in English conversations at a young age, making them widely recognized as little prodigies throughout the entire community, with the endorsement and packaging from the nanny agency. I quickly became a highly sought-after gold standard nanny, with a teaching certificate in hand and bilingual teaching skills. Such an opportunity is rare and hard to come by. When we arrived, Jin Shuren was still asleep, and it was her husband, Feng Qing, who met me. He appeared gentle and refined on the outside. If it weren't for the police announcement 3 years later in my previous life, which revealed his marital infidelity, his act of replacing his wife's child with his mistress's, and pushing his wife off a high-rise building, who would have known he was a wolf in sheep's clothing, perhaps thinking I was young and easy to fool, and that I seemed dull and spoke little. Feng Qing quickly decided to keep me. Just then, my mom's phone calls came in like crazy. I excused myself to go to the nurse's station to ask about Jin Shuren's condition and stepped away to answer the call. Liang Ye, did you drop dead somewhere while buying something? Your sister-in-law is giving birth, and you're running around all over the place, nowhere to be found. Do you even have a conscience? Mom, listen to you. It wasn't me who got my sister-in-law pregnant. Besides, she and my brother decided they wouldn't give birth until 6 p.m. It's only 2 p.m. now. Still early. What help could I possibly be if I went over? All right. I can't talk now. I just got a job interview invitation, and I need to prepare once I make some money. I'll buy longevity locks for the nephews. Okay. After saying that, I didn't care how hysterical she was on the other end and hung up the phone directly. When she called again, I turned off my phone. After that, I checked my outfit. I was wearing the uniform set for childcare workers from the housekeeping company. My hair was also tied up and covered with a dust cap, and I had a mask on my face. With this outfit, even if I passed by my mother, she might not recognize me. Thinking this, I swaggered out. As I approached the ward where Rinjia was, I heard a terrifying scream coming from inside. I can't take it anymore. I can't hold on any longer. When is she going to get here? The doctors and nurses inside were also trying to persuade my brother and the others. The cervix has been fully dilated for a long time. Hurry and get her into the delivery room. The conditions in the waiting room aren't suitable. No, my sister hasn't arrived yet. She can't go in. My brother pushed the nurse aside. Someone couldn't stand it anymore. What's the meaning of your wife giving birth and insisting on waiting for your sister? Could it be that the child in your wife's belly is your sister's? Exactly. Look at how much pain your wife is in, and you're still holding her back. Do you even have a conscience as a man? What do you all know? If she doesn't come, who's going to raise the child for me, you guys? My brother exploded in anger. My mom was so anxious she was pacing around, constantly calling me, but she never expected that I had turned off my phone. Her phone is off. What should we do? My brother's face turned livid with rage, almost as if he wanted to devour someone, and he shouted at the onlookers who were gossiping, Get lost now. What business is it of yours? Are you insane, letting your own child be raised by your sister? How can a grown man say such a thing, if you don't give birth on time? Aren't you afraid the baby might suffocate from lack of oxygen? I heard there's also a risk of the baby passing meconium, which could contaminate the amniotic fluid and lead to a lung infection. That would be truly miserable. Some people are filled with righteous indignation, while others whisper among themselves, It's disgusting. The whole family is like a bunch of lunatics, preying on a young girl. They insist on waiting until 6 in the evening to give birth, hoping the girl will persuade her sister-in-law. They say if she persuades her, her sister-in-law will give birth immediately. I bet once the baby is born, they'll claim she encouraged her sister-in-law to ruin their auspicious timing, and then force her to raise the child. Oh my God, that's so malicious. You didn't hear what her mother said. I never imagined a mother could scheme against her own daughter to help her son like that. It's just, I have to say, what they said is exactly the same as what I experienced in my past life, but for now, I'm not getting involved in their mess. I want to see what else this family can stir up. Just as I was asking about Jin Shuren's condition, a cry of pain came from the VIP delivery room. I rushed over, only to see Jin Shuren biting Feng Qing's shoulder at the door. Her eyes surged with overwhelming hatred, as if she wanted to bite the heartless man before her to death. My heart skipped a beat, unsure if it was due to pain or something else. Feng Qing's face twisted in agony, but soon Jin Shuren released him, crying out, It hurts so much, I'm about to give birth. Feng Qing endured the pain and rushed out to find doctors and nurses. I walked up to Jin Shuren, who looked at me warily and asked, Who are you? I'm a childcare nanny, here to help you. I don't know why your parents haven't arrived yet, but if needed, I can help you contact them. I recall that she gave birth on the same day as Rinjia, but her parents never came to visit her before she was discharged from the hospital. Upon hearing this, tears rolled down her cheeks as she murmured, "My mother passed away. What about your father?" As far as I know, her father passed away not long after Fengqing was arrested, which means at this point, her father should still be alive. Her eyes lit up, and she wanted to reach for her phone, only to realize it wasn't with her at all. Seeing her like this, I immediately understood that she had most likely been isolated from the world by Fengqing in the name of love, but it didn't matter. Her father was something of a celebrity in the neighboring city, so he should be easy to find. "I'll find a way to contact your father," I said, pressing a stamp into her hand. "I'm afraid you might faint later. I'll be waiting outside the whole time, but when the baby is born, find a way to stamp him with this. There are shops outside the hospital that sell this kind of stamp, and I bought 2 on my way in. I don't know when Fengqing switched the babies, but this stamp can last for about a week without washing off, and even 3 or 4 days is enough." Hearing this, she looked at me in shock. I smiled at her. "I told you, I'm here to help you." At that moment, the doctor and nurse also rushed over, and Jin Shuren was taken into the delivery room. I then spread the news of Jin Shuren giving birth through every channel I could think of, including the Jin family company's official website, recruitment sites, and partner companies. Soon, a man contacted me, claiming to be Jin Shuren's adoptive brother. I suddenly remembered a news report I had seen in my previous life. It seemed that after Jin Shuren passed away, her brother came to pay his respects, but on the way back, he was involved in a chain reaction car accident and did not survive. At that time, a photo of him at Jin Shuren's funeral hall was posted online. His gaze toward the coffin was restrained and filled with deep sorrow, which was incredibly moving. At that moment, I thought to myself that his bond with Jin Shuren must have been very profound. I briefly explained Jin Shuren's situation to him, and he said he would come to the hospital soon. Before that, I asked him to book the best postpartum care center in Jin Shuren's name. He soon sent me the signed contract for the postpartum care center. Outside the delivery room, Fengqing answered a phone call and hurriedly left, but surprisingly, as soon as he left, my brother and the doctors and nurses sent my sister-in-law into another delivery room. I checked the time. It wasn't even 3 o'clock yet. In my previous life, by this time, both children had already been born. I wonder if they will be as fortunate this time around. Although my brother's twins are not biologically mine, I took care of them tirelessly for 4 years. Even if they aren't my own, they feel just as close. In my previous life, just as they were starting kindergarten and I was preparing to look for a job, my sister-in-law immediately introduced me to her autistic cousin from her mother's side. Rinjia earnestly tried to persuade me, "Working now is just like being a beast of burden for others. It's better to marry someone with good conditions. My uncle's family only has this one child. If you marry him, 3 apartments and 2 shops will all be yours. Many people can't earn that much in a lifetime. Look, you'll have everything in an instant. How profitable." I was so angry I couldn't speak, but the 2 little girls chimed in one after another, agreeing with their mother. Das Huang, "Yes, Auntie, you're so old and have no work experience. You can't earn much money and it's hard work. Uncle's family is so wealthy. If you marry him, everything will be yours." Xiaoshuang, "Auntie, I don't want you to marry someone far away. Baby wants to be with you forever. Why don't you marry Uncle? That way Baby can visit you anytime." I was shocked. For the first time, I felt that over 3 years of companionship and teaching, switching between Chinese and English to broaden their language skills, tirelessly responding to everything and following through on every word, all in the hope of giving them a childhood without regrets, I had taught them to become clever girls praised by everyone, but in the end, all that cleverness was used against me. But I still held on to a glimmer of hope, thinking maybe my brother and sister-in-law had taught them, so I held back my temper and asked them, "Your cousin's uncle is a fool. If your aunt stays with him, she won't be happy. Do you really think that's okay?" The 2 of them looked at me, then at their parents. When they saw their parents signaling them to continue, they tried their best to persuade me. "Auntie, cousin's uncle is really nice. He even gives us candy. His family is rich. So in the future, whatever we want, you can buy it for us without even having to bargain. Isn't that great?" Little Shuang looked aggrieved. "Yes, Auntie, we only have a few rooms at home. Do you really want to squeeze in with us forever?" Big Shuang looked expectant. "If Auntie gets together with Uncle, we could move into a big house." "Auntie, I want to live in a big house. I want to live in a big house too." "Auntie," listening to their whining, I felt a chill run through my entire body. It was only then that I realized that children who aren't your own can never truly be raised as your own. No matter how well you treat them, it can't compare to a word or 2 from their parents. They may be young, but just like their parents, they are terrifyingly pragmatic. My mom chimed in, "Rin Young is just a quiet kid, but he's a good person, and he's tall. Any children you have in the future will surely be just like him." I thought they were completely insane, just like him. like him with autism, needing someone to feed them at 30. At that moment, my father, who had been playing dead all along, suddenly became assertive. How dare you speak to your mother like that? Do you even have any manners? Your mother only found this family for your own good. Just look at yourself. What kind of state are you in? Disheveled and unkempt. You don't even look like a girl anymore. You should be grateful that someone is willing to take you. What kind of person do you think you can find? If you want to marry, go ahead and marry, just don't drag me into it. I wanted to leave, but my father and brother disagreed. I got into a conflict with them, and my brother accidentally pushed me down the stairs. In the end, they claimed I had fallen to my death by accident. Anyway, I've long been utterly disappointed with my family. Whatever they do has nothing to do with me. But shortly after Rinjia went in, a nurse hurriedly came out pushing a small baby. Where are Rinjia's family members? The baby is in critical condition. My brother, playing a game without looking up, said impatiently, what's wrong? The first baby is out. It's a girl, but due to prolonged asphyxia, she needs to be transferred to the NICU for emergency treatment. A family member needs to sign. My mother leaned over and said, what's the point of saving her? She's just a money-losing burden. My heart tightened, and I looked toward my brother, only to see him turn and walk away while playing a game, the sound of a double kill coming from his phone. At the same time, a nurse from another delivery room came out holding a baby. Where are Jinshurun's family members? Here, Fengqing had somehow run over, and I followed along to join them, but I noticed Fengqing glance at the nurse, and she gave him an almost imperceptible nod. I immediately guessed that the moment Fengqing switched the babies might be right now, so I quickly pulled out another stamp and, with a pop, stamped the baby's left wrist. Then, I shamelessly lied. My previous employer's child was almost swapped in the hospital. Since then, I've made it a habit to bring a stamp to mark newborns. The hospital won't object, will they? Upon hearing this, the nurse froze completely, while Fengqing looked at me with utter disbelief. I didn't pay him any mind and kindly helped him out of the awkward situation. It's normal not to know how to hold a child when you're a first-time father. Let me show you. With that, I skillfully took the child and, under Fengqing's astonished and furious gaze, said to him with a serious expression, just like this, try to relax a bit. If looks could curse, I think Fengqing's would have been quite profane, but this was just the beginning. There would be plenty more for him to curse about later. I saw that Fengqing had no intention of taking the child, so I didn't press him. I handed the child to the nurse and said, please take the child back to his mother. Thank you. The nurse anxiously looked at Fengqing. He had no choice but to glare at me resentfully before letting her take the child back. As soon as the nurse left, he turned to me with a cold expression and said, you're fired. I'm sorry, Mr. Feng. I'm not sure what I've done to displease you. Could it be because I marked the young master's hand? Are you not worried that he might be swapped? Or perhaps, before I could finish speaking, Fengqing pointed at me through gritted teeth. I said, you're fired. Get out of here now. Terminating the contract without cause requires a penalty of 30%. Will you pay in cash or scan the code? Without further ado, I took out the contract and handed it to him. He probably didn't want to get tangled up with me any longer, so he pulled out his phone and prepared to make the payment. I kindly reminded him, my monthly salary is 50,000, 30% of that is 15,000, for today's half-day work, I'll just give it to you as a gift. Fengqing nearly choked with anger, but he still paid me quickly, shooing me away like a fly. I'm a straightforward person too, so I took the money and left. Before leaving, I saw another child being wheeled out of Rinjia's delivery room. The nurse was still trying to persuade my mother and brother, saying there was still hope for the child's rescue, but my mom and my brother were both very cold, saying there was no need to rescue them. If they could survive, they'd survive. If not, it was their fate, and anyway, the family had no money, so they've made up their minds to give up on the two children. But what was even more surprising was that Rinjia, due to a prolonged labor, experienced poor postpartum uterine contractions, leading to massive bleeding. She was rushed to the emergency room right after leaving the delivery room. I didn't pay any more attention to the mess in my family. I guess Fengqing's illegitimate child must be in the hospital now, but I just don't know where, so I spent some money and hired a few idle nursing assistants, asking them to keep an eye on Fengqing's movements. I secretly told them that the man in the VIP ward wanted to replace his legitimate child with an illegitimate one, and that his mistress was likely giving birth in this hospital. He was a real scoundrel. Middle-aged aunties love gossip like this, and I made up some more stories about Fengqing and his mistress. The aunties were filled with a sense of justice and started keeping tabs on Fengqing for me. I asked them to keep it confidential and to inform me immediately if anything came up, promising them a big red envelope as a reward. Sure enough, not long after, Someone noticed Fengqing meeting with the family of a postpartum woman from the floor above. The woman showed her child to Fengqing, and after a brief conversation in the fire escape, they quickly parted ways. I asked the aunt to help me inquire about the postpartum woman's situation and then sent her information directly to Jin Shuren's adoptive brother, asking him to look into it. After that, I noticed that the mistress's family also bought a stamp and imprinted it on their child's wrist. After all, many nurses on duty had seen me stamping my child, in the same hospital, with Fengqing's intention. It was actually quite easy for them to swap the babies, but no one expected that Fengqing would be in such a hurry, swapping the child that very night. Moreover, as soon as they swapped the babies, the mistress was discharged from the hospital right after. The person following her reported that she gave the child to a man for 20,000 yuan as soon as she left. She's really something. While I had someone keep an eye on the trafficker, Jin Shuren directly called the police, saying someone was trying to abduct her child. She cried as she explained that her child had 2 birthmarks, one on the arm and one on the inner thigh, but this child only has a birthmark on the arm, so it must have been switched. Fengqing was dumbfounded on the spot, but he quickly calmed down and turned the tables, claiming that Jin Shuren was suffering from postpartum depression and had a confused memory, insisting that the baby's wristband had always been there, that the hospital couldn't have made a mistake, and telling her not to make a scene. Then Jin Shuren took out the spare phone I had given her and showed the police the photos of the child. Although newborns all look quite similar, there are subtle differences upon closer inspection, so the police quickly took the matter seriously. And it was at this moment that I made a grand entrance, providing the police with a video recording. I explained, I accidentally overheard Mr. Feng on the phone talking about swapping babies, so I kept an eye out. After all, who would willingly let their own child be swapped after carrying them for 10 months? Oh, and I also discovered that Mr. Feng had some unspeakable relationship with Ms. Lin, who gave birth at the same hospital, so I had someone keep an eye on Ms. Lin's whereabouts and found out that she sold her baby right after leaving the hospital. Hearing this, all the police officers grew serious, and Fengqing was so anxious he looked like he wanted to tear me apart. Don't talk nonsense. I don't even know any Ms. Lin, and you're just resentful because I didn't hire you as a nanny. Do you have to slander me like this? I nodded. Mr. Feng, it doesn't matter what you say. But officer, even if the child Ms. Lin sold was her own, that's still illegal, right? Besides, what if the child she sold was actually Ms. Jin's? Fengqing trembled, almost losing his balance. Just as he was hoping Lin Xiaoxiao wouldn't be caught, I told the police right in front of him that I had people keeping an eye on Lin Xiaoxiao and that human trafficker. At that moment, Jin Shuren immediately cooperated with me and started crying, begging the police to help her find her child. Fengqing was so furious he felt dizzy, wishing he could tear me apart on the spot, but I've always been a person of justice. How could I possibly be afraid of him? Later, while we were at the police station giving our statements, Jin Shuren's adoptive brother arrived, standing at 6'3". His cold and imposing presence made him the center of attention the moment he stepped in. As soon as Fengqing saw him, his expression immediately turned grim. But there was no time for him to delay, and we were all taken downstairs together. However, what I didn't expect was to see my mother in the lobby downstairs, crying and wailing, demanding compensation from the hospital. From the crowd of onlookers, I learned that Renjia had her uterus removed due to severe bleeding and could no longer conceive. My mother, however, claimed that the doctor's removal of the uterus was a deliberate attempt to prevent my brother from having descendants. My brother also refused to acknowledge the surgical consent form he had previously signed, accusing the hospital of deceiving him. First, they caused both of his twins to suffer brain damage, and then they made it impossible for his wife to bear children. He, a grown man, held his child and cried out loud, while my mother wept heartbrokenly beside him, saying that marrying his wife had cost the family all their money. But now, not only were the 2 granddaughters lost, but his wife's life was also hanging by a thread, and she could never have children again. She said the hospital was trying to cut off their family line, and how could she face the ancestors of the Liang family? The 2 of them sang in harmony, each holding a baby of unknown fate, shifting all the blame onto the hospital, which immediately drew a crowd of onlookers. Of course, given that their earlier expectation that I would help raise their children had already spread, many people stepped forward to explain the truth to those who were unaware. My mother panicked upon hearing this and jumped up, ready to confront them. In the midst of the scuffle, she spotted me, her eyes widened, and she lunged forward. Liang Yeye, where the hell have you been? Your sister-in-law is giving birth, such a big deal, and you... I dodged her swinging hand, and she ended up slapping the police officer behind me. Instantly, she shrank back. Oh, officer, what's this? To avoid giving anything away, I quickly explained with a pained expression, I got into a bit of trouble and need to go to the police station. Mom, could you prepare some money for me? Where would I get money? Your sister-in-law is still lying in the hospital, and we don't even know if your two nieces will survive. It's all your fault. If you had come earlier, none of this would have happened at home. As she tried to hit me again, the police stopped her, seizing the opportunity. I followed another officer out while pleading urgently, Mom, you have to save me, Mom. Watching my mother's constipated expression, I got into the police car in a rather good mood. By the time we arrived at the police station, Lin Xiaoxiao had already been apprehended. She was quite bold, thinking that Fengqing had arranged everything for her, after being discharged from the hospital. She directly moved into the luxurious suite at the postpartum care center that Jin Shuran had carefully chosen for herself, showing no sense of guilt for having done something wrong and needing to hide. It wasn't until she was arrested and saw the human trafficker again at the police station that she woke up as if from a dream, realizing that her conspiracy with Fengqing had been exposed. It was also at this time that the lawyer sent by Jin Mingyu not only brought various pieces of evidence of Fengqing and Lin Xiaoxiao's affair but also directly submitted all the evidence of their crimes in swapping the babies at the hospital. The police arrested them on the spot. Jin Shuran's father arrived early the next morning, reportedly having just returned from abroad. She said it was all thanks to me that she was able to expose Fengqing's conspiracy during that helpless moment yesterday and protect her own child. Mr. Jin is a straightforward man. As soon as he heard that I had helped Jin Shuran, he immediately gave me a card with 200,000 yuan as a token of gratitude. There must have been some misunderstanding between the father and daughter before this, while I was outside with the child. The two of them hugged each other and cried bitterly in the hospital room. After they finished crying and came out, Mr. Jin gave me another 200,000 yuan. I wasn't sure whether I should accept it, but Jin Shuran kept giving me meaningful looks, urging me to take it quickly. I won't stand on ceremony then. I had a chat with Jin Shuran earlier, and I honestly told her that I was reborn from 3 years in the future, having learned about her situation from the news, given a second chance at life. I didn't want to see her deceived by that scumbag again, so I decided to lend her a hand. I also took the opportunity to share the mess that's going on in my own family. After hearing it, she looked utterly incredulous and said, Your parents' favoritism toward your brother is so obvious. Why didn't you just run away? What's the point of coming back? I smiled bitterly, wanting to say that if my parents had been completely unkind to me, I might have truly left long ago. But the most terrifying thing is that they showed me a little kindness, which is why I couldn't just walk away without a care. She had no words to respond, so she told me some things about her rebirth, but she never expected to be reborn just 1 second before giving birth. Fortunately, I arrived in time. Otherwise, even with her rebirth, she would likely have had to expend a great deal of effort to bring Fengqing and the others to justice under those circumstances. She said her previous life was like being cursed by someone. She didn't know her child had been swapped, she didn't know the nanny she had arranged for had been replaced, and she didn't even know that the postpartum care center she had chosen had been taken over by Lin Xiaoxiao. In her previous life, Fengqing lied to her, saying that the postpartum care center she had booked was under investigation for child theft. In a hurry, he booked her a postpartum care center in a remote suburban area, claiming it was a villa environment surrounded by mountains and water, far from the hustle and bustle. In reality, it was so remote that even getting a taxi was difficult. This was also one of the key reasons why, when she discovered Fengqing seemed to be cheating and argued with him, wanting to leave but finding herself with nowhere to go, he pushed her from a high-rise building. No one found her for a long time, and she ultimately lost her life. She said she was like a foolish blind person, being manipulated by Fengqing and even helping him count the money. If it weren't for the dowry she brought, Fengqing's family company would have gone bankrupt long ago due to a funding shortage, but she was blind in both eyes and mind, stubbornly willing to be the love-struck fool. She even ended up harming Jin Mingyu because of it. I originally wanted to say that her father also passed away after avenging her, but I thought about it and didn't say anything. After all, that was all in the past life. As long as we're all doing well in this life, that's what matters. After that, I became Jin Shuran's best friend and nanny. She paid me a monthly salary of 100,000, and all I had to do was chat with her, practice yoga, and play with the baby. I have to say, high-end postpartum centers are really something else. The nutritious meals, postpartum recovery, everything is top-notch. By the time she left the postpartum center, Jin Shuran's figure had already recovered about 70 to 80%. In comparison, I've actually become quite a bit rounder. but I have no idea how my parents found out about my whereabouts. They actually came wailing and crying to Jin Shuren's house. However, seeing the huge crowd of people at the villa entrance, my scalp went numb, and I whispered to Jin Shuren, how much did it cost to hire so many bodyguards? My parents probably never expected that just by asking me for some money, they would be surrounded by dozens of bodyguards before even seeing me. Jin Shuren reassured me, I'm treating you. You don't have to spend a dime, but to be honest, with those dozens of bodyguards around, my parents really did look at me more favorably and spoke more gently. Yeah, we just came to see how you're doing these days. They glanced around nervously, their unease palpable. I said I was doing fine, and then asked about the family situation out of politeness. My mom immediately started wiping away tears. First, she recounted how Renjia, by insisting on having children at a certain time, ended up with both children suffering from cerebral palsy and even had to have her uterus removed. Then, she shifted the conversation to express sympathy for my brother. Your brother has it so hard. Renjia has brought so much trouble to our family, yet she still doesn't know better. She causes a scene at home every day, making it impossible for your brother to even come home. I haven't seen him in days. I casually agreed with her a few words, then heard her say, in my opinion, since she can't have children anymore, there's no point in keeping her. Why not just have your brother divorce her, then we can find him a new wife. Do you know anyone suitable around you? As she spoke, she glanced in Jin Shuren's direction several times and whispered, I heard your employer's husband cheated and is in the middle of a lawsuit. Maybe we could introduce her to your brother later. I never expected my mother to have such an idea. I was so angry I laughed and immediately turned hostile. Liangbin is lazy, ugly, and has violent tendencies. He's only a treasure in your eyes. In society, he's nothing but a tumor. How dare you even think of matching him with Miss Jin? Probably not expecting me to be so blunt in my retort, my mother froze for a moment, but having long been accustomed to acting as the superior in front of me, she immediately swung a slap at me, though it was intercepted before it could land. The bodyguard grabbed her hand and, in the blink of an eye, dislocated her joint. Her agonized scream instantly filled the room. Seeing my mother incapacitated in the blink of an eye, my father was so terrified that he shrank back on the sofa, not daring to move a muscle. Like a quail, I sighed and helped my mother up. Mom, look at you, really, this is at the employer's house, and their bodyguards are no pushovers. Do you think I'm still at home, letting you do whatever you want? You're just asking for trouble. My mother was in so much pain that cold sweat dripped down her face. After she had recovered a bit, the bodyguard who had dislocated her arm snapped it back into place with 2 quick movements, causing her to let out another scream of agony. But after this incident, she no longer had any wild ideas. Before leaving, she gritted her teeth and asked me when I would be on vacation, wanting me to go back and help her. From what she said, it seemed the 2 babies had nearly driven her and my dad crazy, and they were waiting for me to return and take over. I gave her a couple of perfunctory replies, and though she knew it, she dared not voice her anger. In the end, she still wanted to ask me for money, but I had just started working and hadn't received my salary yet. Where would I get the money to give her? They returned in defeat, and Jin Shuren and I left this place half a month later, heading to the neighboring city. After that, if they wanted to find me, it would depend on luck. After returning home, Jin Shuren gradually took over the Jin family with the help of Jin Mingyu. Later, her father tried to match her with Jin Mingyu, but she didn't agree. After all, having lived a second life, in her view, what is more important than money? Even though Jin Mingyu was good-looking and had always silently supported her, she remained completely unmoved. It wasn't until someone tried to take him away that she realized her own heart, and thus began the journey of chasing her husband through the crematorium. Of course, all of this came later. Throughout this process, Jin Shuren never forgot about me. She funded me to start a home service company, with the business mainly divided into 2 areas, clothing organization and high-end nanny services. Thanks to the connections of the Jin family, my business has been exceptionally successful since its opening. Within less than half a year, I opened a branch, and my career was thriving. When Jin Shuren's son was 1 year old, Fengqing and Lin Xiaoxiao were not only sentenced for trafficking infants and young children, but even the Feng family company faced continuous setbacks and soon teetered on the brink of bankruptcy. Jin Shuren wanted to divorce Fengqing, but Fengqing had one condition: he wanted Jin Shuren to go see him. Just as we both guessed, as soon as they met, Fengqing broke down in tears, begging for forgiveness. Jin Shuren slapped him a few times, telling him that with such a major mistake, filing for divorce was a done deal. Whether he agreed or not didn't matter much. The main reason she came to see him was to give him those slaps. At this point, the matter between Jin Shuren and Fengqing was considered closed. As for my parents and my brother and sister-in-law, It said that my brother has been insisting on divorce because Rinjia can no longer have children. My parents added fuel to the fire, causing quite a stir between the two families. Rinjia even posted their plan to have children and have me help raise them online, which caused quite a sensation. Although she was also criticized, she seized the opportunity to go live and play the victim. Unexpectedly becoming a minor internet celebrity, after gaining fame, she immediately dumped my brother. She didn't want children originally, but the court awarded her one. She took her child to live streams, which actually carved out a path for raising a disabled child. In contrast, my brother and my parents were cyberbullied, afraid to even step out of the house, facing a child with cerebral palsy every day, their entire beings filled with despair. Finally, one day, my brother couldn't take it anymore and drowned that child in the toilet. The family decided to move somewhere else to start over. However, he never expected that Rinjia saw his actions through the surveillance and directly called the police, sending him in. My parents begged me to help him, saying we're siblings after all, but in my past life, he schemed to have me raise his child, schemed to have me marry a fool, and when he pushed me off the building and watched me die, he never once thought of me as his sister. I refused to help Liangbin, which once again broke my parents' defenses. They screamed hysterically, but it didn't hurt me in the slightest, and I couldn't be bothered to deal with them, so I just deleted and blocked them in one go. The next time I heard about them was when Liangbin was sentenced to 16 years, and my dad tried to have a son with someone else, only to have his leg broken by my mom. The whole family is just a mess. As for Rinjia, she didn't fare much better either. Just as her live streaming career was taking off, someone dug up a video of her abusing her child, and her live streaming career came to an end. Later, that child of hers didn't survive either, dying before the age of 3. She then went to another city and married an old widower with children, helping to raise someone else's kids. But that child turned out to be ungrateful. In his teens, he angered his father to death and later often resorted to hitting her, making her life utterly miserable. 16 years later, Liangbin was released from prison, but due to a fight in prison that left him permanently injured, he could no longer have children of his own. The two unexpectedly encountered each other, each blaming the other for ruining their entire life. They fought like enraged roosters, ultimately tumbling down the stairs to their deaths. As for me, after breaking free from them, I achieved success in both career and love, becoming a true winner in life. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.